Hi everyone, Dr. Monette here to welcome you to week 14 of EDU 210. So for this week, we're going to be finishing up with our Schoology and our Google Classroom, and we're going to start exploring ClassFlow and continuing our Google Teacher Level 1 certification training. So for this week, we are going to finish up with our Google Classroom. So we have part 2, part 3, and part 4 to wrap up. So for this week, you have an assignment due on Wednesday, which is part 2 of your Google Classroom student. So if you click on that hyperlink, it will take you over to the Google Drive folder, and you can click on that assignment. And then for part 2, what you need to do is you need to join the class using the code that was emailed to you on Sunday and complete the following tasks. So you're going to complete and submit the creating an interactive graphic organizer using Google Slides assignment. You're going to complete and post the interactive graphic organizer to the question, and you're going to complete the Google Form assessment, which is that digital breakout. Now, again, your Google Slides, you're going to use the assignment that you created already when we were making interactive graphic organizer. So you're not making anything new for this assignment. You're using what we've already done in previous weeks. So going back over to the weekly directions and guidelines for Sunday of week 14, you need to respond to 2 peer Schoology discussion board posts, making sure that you give them feedback. So click on this hyperlink and it will take you to the directions for part 5 and part 4 and how to respond. And then you also need to respond to the conclusion of the textbook. So making sure you're giving them good feedback based off of the technology that stood out to them, their reflection, and how they can use that technology in their future classrooms. So give each other good feedback based off of that chapter. And then you're also supposed to complete part 3 and part 4 of your Google Classroom. So going back over to the Google Classroom folder, part 3, you're going to log in. For part 3 of this assignment, you're going to log in to the Google Classroom as a teacher, and you're going to evaluate and provide feedback for the interactive graphic organizer question, which is the discussion board post, and the creating an interactive graphic organizer using Google Slides. Also, after you're done doing all of that, you're going to complete part 4, where you create your discussion board post. Again, you don't submit anything for part 1 through part 3. Everything I can see when you add me as a teacher or a co-teacher in the programs. But for the discussion board post, this is where I grade everything. So you're going to create a discussion board post where you explain the pros and cons of using Google Classroom. You're going to explain how the program can be used in your future classroom. You're going to compare it to Google Classroom and to Schoology. You can also compare Seesaw if that is the one that you prefer, and then also state which one you prefer and why. So based off of Google Classroom, Schoology, and Seesaw. So explain which one you prefer and why. And then in the next week, you're going to respond to your peers' posts. And you're going to provide them a list of strengths and weaknesses, about their pros and cons list, their explanation of how it can be used, their comparison, and their preference. So going back over to the weekly directions and guidelines, for this week, we're going to start a new part, and we're going to talk about interactive classroom presentation and lessons. So ClassFlow is one of the first ones we're going to talk about. We're also going to talk about Nearpod next week, but this week we're going to talk about ClassFlow. And for this assignment, what you're going to do is you're going to click on the hyperlink here, and it's going to take you over to the guidelines for ClassFlow. So clicking on the directions here, it will show you everything that is required of you for the ClassFlow assignment. So ClassFlow, like I was saying, is an interactive lesson program. The nice thing about ClassFlow is that you can integrate things into your lesson that you can use with your students. So a lot of the classrooms are becoming one-to-one. So instead of having an active wall or an interactive whiteboard, a lot of the students now have one-to-one devices in front of them. So instead of them raising their hands and taking turns coming up to the board and answering questions or underlining things, Now they can all do it at the same time. And ClassFlow and Nearpod, which we'll talk about next week, are great ways to do these types of activities with your students to engage them more in the lesson, and also to accommodate for students with visual needs or auditory needs, because they have the device right there and they can use the headphones if they need assistance with hearing, or if they need close proximity to the board. Now it's right in front of them and they can see the instruction, and you can also get formative assessment on them. So ClassFlow is the first one that we're going to talk about. And for this activity, you're going to be creating a ClassFlow interactive lesson, sharing the link as a class, creating a discussion board post about the pros and cons of using ClassFlow and how it can be used in your future classroom. So the directions here, there are lots and lots of links here to help you understand how to create a lesson, how to make teacher and student cards, how to create a class, how to create an activity, and here is the YouTube channel as well. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to sign up for an account, and here's the link to do that. Create your first class. In your class, you're going to create an interactive lesson that includes one or more activities, two or more different types of assessments, student and teacher cards, and here's an example of what a lesson should look like. And here are some screenshots here as well to show you how to do these things. So after you create your lesson, what you're going to do is you're going to create a discussion board post. And in your discussion board post, you're going to do the following. You're going to share your lesson as a link. You can also email it to me as well if you need to. You're going to explain the pros and cons using ClassFlow, and you're going to explain how ClassFlow can be used in your future classroom. And then the following week, you're going to view everybody's interactive lessons, and you're going to give them a thorough list of strengths and places for improvement based off of their lesson, their pros and cons list, and their explanation of how it can be used in their future classroom. And then if you keep scrolling down, you'll find your rubric. And as long as you meet the criteria above, you're going to hit all of the points of the rubric. So going back over to the weekly directions and guidelines here, the last thing that you're going to do for this week is your Google Teacher Certification Training for Unit 13, which is focusing on promoting digital citizenship and positive online behavior. That's going to take about 50 minutes to complete and 3 lessons. Make sure that you take screenshots of the questions and your answers and the percentages. Now, for this week, there is no textbook chapter. You have completed all of that to this point, and we're just continuing to finish up our Google Teacher Certification and the last bit of the technology we're going to talk about throughout this course. So if you have any questions throughout the week or have any trouble creating your ClassFlow interactive lesson, please email me and let me know. Just give me at least 24 hours to respond to you. And if you have any questions, just please let me know.